here to talk about a couple of pop culture reads, I guess, that I've had recently. I'm going to start with Toxic by Sarah Ditum. And we'll talk about the book, and then we'll talk about some of the controversy around the author, which I only found out after I read the book. We can talk about that. And then 60 Songs That Explain the 90s by Rob Harvilla. This is basically extracted from a long-running podcast, and we will talk about that as well. We'll start with Toxic. Found this book at the library, and it just sounded interesting. It's about women and fame in the, basically the late 90s into the 2000s. What do I want to say? She calls it the upskirt era. She explains why that, but each chapter is based on a, famous woman. There's Britney Spears, which I had just read Britney's memoir, so some of that felt kind of redundant to me. There's Lindsay Lohan, there's Janet Jackson, and, Nipplegate and that kind of thing. Alia. And so each chapter focuses on this woman and, usually an incident or a number of incidences in their, celebrity that added up to tabloid fodder, judgment, had some kind of impact on their, careers. And I gave it a 3.5. I rounded up to 4 when I, rated it on Goodreads, because I was rating it based on the book, not knowing anything about the author. And again, we will talk about that in just a moment. Each chapter was pretty interesting to me. I have a media studies degree. Basically, it's a media literacy degree, right? So I'm always interested in pop culture because that was my focus, was on fan culture specifically, but the understanding of how people are portrayed and how that is consumed by the audience. It's very different now, obviously, in the social media era. And so this book, because it's focusing on kind of that pre-Twitter, social media blow up, the parasocial stuff there's still a little bit more distance, I guess, is what I want to say, between a star and the consumer audience. That's what this book focuses on. But the thing is, the Alia chapter, I wanted to know more about Alia, and it talks so much about R. Kelly and R. Kelly's career. And I get it, Alia died young. There's maybe not a lot you can say, or there's not a lot of information handy, because Alia became a very private person, and obviously her family is not maybe forthcoming with the details of the R. Kelly thing either. So Ditum pivots to discuss R. Kelly and other grooming males in the industry. So it doesn't end up feeling like it's a chapter about Alia, really. Same thing where, yes, Janet Jackson, but then we talk a lot about Justin Timberlake, and he was involved in that incident at the Super Bowl. But, so a lot of the chapters felt like they kind of had these tangents, these diversions from the actual, what you were there to read. That being said, there interesting points were made. Maybe they didn't need to be as drawn out or as long but it's a well-researched book, I think. I mean, there's a lot of citations, a lot of quotes, a lot of, I could see something like this being used in one of my college classes back in the day when we were studying this stuff. Let's just say that there's an academic level to the text that would not be out of place in a college classroom that's discussing these topics. Kim Kardashian's focuses on beauty and her curviness and and I guess all the fuss around whether or not she had work done on her body, those kinds of things. So yeah, that being said, after I finished reading this book, after I read a book, I go and I look at other reviews too to see who felt similarly, and it turns out this author is transphobic. She identifies as bisexual, but definitely, people were writing that she was trans, so I went to look at her Twitter, and yes, I mean, based on at least the posts about the Olympic boxer, I would classify this author as transphobic, which is problematic and kind of colors their ability. Does it? So this is the question. This is the topic, right? Does that bias color an author's ability to write about women? Now, all of the women that she writes about are, cisgendered women, as far as I know. There were some remarks that Ditum, I don't know, that dead named some people. I am maybe not privy, because it seemed like the times that she used a different name, like Ellen Page, and then put now Elliot in parentheses, or spoke about Bruce Jenner, but then had a footnote saying at the time that was the name he was using, and and all of the material that I was looking at referred to him this way. So I felt like she made allowances for that, but I don't know if there are other people in here who are dead named that I'm just not aware of, or if people were upset that she used the previous names, even though to me as an academic, I understand why she did it, and at least she made notes of, I don't know. If you know, please tell me, because I feel like maybe I missed something there. But yeah, so does her transphobia color her academia? Definitely, I would think under some circumstances, yes. There are some topics that I would maybe not take this author's point of view on, but for these, clearly transphobia may color your thoughts, feelings about womanhood and personhood broadly, so maybe it does affect the stuff in this book. Knowing I would need to go reread the book with that filter on, I guess, and see if I can if it something else stands out as I read. I read it not knowing the author was transphobic, so I kind of took it at face value, and then it's like, oh, now if I read it again, would some other things kind of pop out at me, because I would have that knowledge. Yeah, I don't know. Let me know your thoughts about, is it better to know more about an author when you're reading something, or less about an author when you're reading something, or, is ignorance bliss? I don't think so. I think, I'm going to make a whole video about why ignorance is not the solution to anything, but that's coming later. In the meantime, let's switch to 60 Songs That Explain the 90s. Okay, so my husband bought this book. He listens to the podcast. I've only listened to a couple of episodes of this podcast. It is way more than 60 episodes now. I think it's like twice that, but there's a certain amount of nostalgia involved. Rob Harvilla is maybe 2 years younger than me, so whenever he talks about the age he was or the grade he was in when a song became a thing, I can relate more or less. There are some places where it breaks, he'll still have been in high school when I was in college, or but it's not a big enough gap to really make a difference. He writes each chapter, has a list of the songs and artists that are going to be covered in that chapter, right? And then he just it's almost stream of consciousness to some degree. It's clear that Some of it is scripted, and some of it, based on what I read, was lifted almost directly from the podcast. This whole thing about Green Day and concert t-shirts, I was like, oh yeah, I listened to that episode. This is just from that episode. But then he has a lot of footnotes that are very like, oh, when I did this episode, there was this other part I was going to do and I didn't do it. So, here's like your bonus material, I guess. But yeah, he writes almost stream of consciousness, but sometimes you can tell there's kind of a stretch to connect to the material. And then I guess he writes a lot like he talks, which means that sometimes, just as an editor, okay, sometimes I notice some words and phrases are repetitive. Sometimes you can tell it's on purpose, right? He thinks he's being funny by like doing the thing, but at times it gets a little wearying as opposed to amusing. It's like, he thinks he's doing cute callbacks, but they're not actually that cute. And then, like, I should say, I think this book is more for guys than, obviously women can enjoy the information here. But there's something about the skew of the nostalgia that is very male. And so there are things where like, oh, this affected me deeply, and I'm just like, okay, I guess. Also, though, I was not a kid. I'm still not a kid. Well, I'm not a kid anymore at all, but I'm still not a person who was into really popular music, alt rock, punk rock, grunge. I'm an only child. I listened to pretty much what my parents listened to, which was not stuff that was cool. And even when I found stuff I liked, it was not stuff that was cool. Okay, like I was listening to Richard Marx, Don Henley, Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever was a big favorite of mine. Genesis's We Can't Dance was probably the first thing I bought on actual CD when I got a CD player. So yeah, not the cool stuff that kids at school were listening to. I was not listening to Bush or Green Day or Morrissey or The Cure. I had a friend who was really into Red Hot Chili Peppers and Pearl Jam and Erasure and that stuff. So I was aware of it, but it was not, that wasn't my thing. I was listening to John Mellencamp, things like that. So yeah, like some of my inability to relate might just be that I was not listening to that music. I mean, to this day, Matchbox 20 is my favorite band. It's between them and Jimmy Buffett, right? But, and we do get a little bit of Rob Thomas in here. I'm trying to decide if it's kind or not, like if it's good. I can't tell. I get the feeling Harvilla is maybe not, but you can't, Rob Thomas is just like the nicest guy, right? So yeah, I won't hear a word against him. That I just, no, but in any case, it is an interesting read. It is a fun read. It's a fast read. And it's, largely very personal, but the idea is that his personal experiences are in some way universal. Like, again, going to a Green Day concert, buying the t-shirt, feeling really cool when you show up at school. You're like, yeah, I'm going to have this cool t-shirt on. And then like a third of the people at the school are wearing the same shirt or some Green Day shirt because they were all at the concert. I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. I didn't go to cool concerts. I went to Genesis. Well, I went to Pink Floyd when they did that, what was that? The Division Bell tour, right? I went and saw them. So, but I was also a kid who didn't really care if people, I was wearing like my Sting Tin Sumner's Tales shirt to school, and I was wearing my Genesis concert shirt because I did see Genesis in concert too. And so I was going to not cool concerts and wearing not cool shirts, I guess. So yeah, this is a good book. Again, 4 stars, solid 4 stars. A little bit taken off for, I do feel like it just needed a little more editing. But maybe that would have taken away some of the voice, and the voice is kind of part of the point. Definitely reads like you're reading kind of podcasty stuff. So yeah, it's cute though. And if you're into music, especially 90s music, nostalgia kind of thing, if you're my age, if you're old like me, then you might enjoy it, or you might enjoy the podcast if you haven't listened to it. My husband's always like, oh, you need to hear this episode and this episode and this episode, because it's all, there are certain songs, certain bands that at least I can connect with, because he knows. He'll be like, oh yeah, you like this band or this song, at least I know, My husband was the one who actually broadened my music repertoire when we met, by giving me counting. I didn't listen to counting. I was kind of vaguely if I heard a song, I'd be like, yeah, I've heard this song, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you it was Counting Crows or something, like that. So, and Marillion and bands like that. My husband was the one who, even Gin Blossoms, which I didn't used to listen to. I, again, didn't own any of their CDs. I would have kind of picked out a song and been like, yeah, I've definitely heard that around. But I fell in love with a lot of those bands, which are still, I think, relatively uncool to like. They're all kind of in the same, they're under the same umbrella as Matchbox 20, Counting Crows, Gin Blossoms, Train, Maroon 5. I don't know. I'm not cool, guys. I'm just not. Anyway, all that being said, those are the couple of books I've read recently. And I don't know where I'm going next. I've got a stack, and I've got to figure out which book I want to read next. But let me know your thoughts about 90s music in general, tabloids, how they depict women, whether or not an author's biases colors their ability to be objective with their academic work. All of that, let me know in the comments, and until next time, take care.